All right, so we are live. This is the action phase, and I'm the facilitator this time. And I want to welcome everyone. So, hi, Katie. Hi, Cindy.
Hey. Hi, Lindsay. Great to see you guys.
Hello. Okay, so before we really get into it, I just wanted to review the agenda. Does anybody have any questions or any concerns about what was sent out to you?
No, I'm
okay. Good. Fabulous. Okay. So the objective of this meeting is really just to go over what the action phase looks like. I want to cover kind of the topics that was discussed in the agenda and kind of figure out what you guys would take away from our meeting today. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. And then I kind of came up with I looked up a little mindfulness activity to get us in the groove of things. Are you guys comfortable with doing something like that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Great. Okay, so what we're going to do is a really simple breathing technique. It's called finger breathing. Are either of you familiar with it?
Is that where you hold your hand out and then you go around and breathe?
Yep.
I love that one.
Are you familiar with it? Okay, so I'll explain it just a little bit and then I'll kind of like read through it. But yeah, so all you do is kind of hold your hand out, and then when you go up a finger, you're breathing in. And when you go back down, you're breathing out. And we'll do that through your entire hand. And then we can go back through your hand. And then I want to do that twice, like once, twice, 3, 4. Is kind of my plan. I want you guys to go at your own pace. I don't want you to feel like rushed if like somebody is going really fast or really slow or whatever, but the objective is to kind of have something tangible. So your hand on your hand, really feel your finger going up and down, and then focus on your breathing. So we can just start. You can close your eyes if you want. You can kind of look somewhere, I don't know, that one else if you care. But yeah, we'll just kind of go through that and kind of set our intentions for the meeting. So whenever you're ready. All right, is everyone done? All right, we in the zone? How did that feel for you guys?
That was good.
Relaxed. I realized that was a little uncomfortable to do while being recorded, so thank you for participating. But okay, so kind of moving into the action phase. I just kind of wanted to go back to, I know we talked a lot about the balance of what process and content were throughout our warm-up phase when Cindy was the facilitator. So I just wanted to touch on that, if it's the same or if it varies, or what your opinions are with the balancing process and content now in the action phase. What are your thoughts on it? Cindy or Katie can go.
I'm just kind of looking at the chapter again, just
Sure.
so I can kind of refer back. Cindy, if you have any.
I know. Oh, sorry. I can go a little bit. I know, like when I was doing the warm up, we had talked a lot about needing to know the content. That content was was probably more priority. I think when you get into the action a little more is when the content starts to take a little bit more of that priority. You still have to be mindful of content throughout, but I think when you get into that action phase, hopefully if you've done the warm up phase correctly, you should probably be spending, I think an effective task group would probably be spending more time in that content, but always revisiting, or more time in process, and then revisiting content more.
And you're saying that for the action phase, you think that?
Yeah.
They focus more on the content or the process? I'm sorry.
Process. Sorry, am I getting them backwards?
No, I was just thinking in my own head and looking at, like, reviewing the chapter and stuff. I know we've talked about how we focus on the content and we really want to get things going and not really thinking about the other members of the task group and getting to know them and kind of feeling out the task group. And I guess for me, I'm wondering, I guess, how to balance both in the action phase, and if you do kind of focus on one over the other. Because in that warm-up phase, I think it says to focus more on the process and how to get to know your task group members. And then in the action phase, I'm wondering if you do more content or something, because then you kind of get it going. I guess I'm not, maybe you guys can elaborate more. Thinking out loud, kind of.
No, I think that's great. I think I don't think there's like a right or wrong answer for sure. I mean, if you look at the two scenarios that's in the book, I'll just put it up here. You can see that like the process and the content are like they're really there's like no set way to do it. It's kind of in a bell curve. I think, Katie, what you're maybe trying to say a little bit is it is really content focused automatically in the action phase. But I think it's important to kind of bring it back to the process a little bit and meeting with people and making sure that they're still kind of on the same page and all that kind of stuff. But that was my interpretation of it. Was that kind of what you were trying to say, Katie?
Yeah, that is what I was saying. And it's hard because we're kind of asking for a balance, but in the action phase, I feel like it should be more content-based. Like it really isn't balanced. So that's where I was like, gosh, I just don't know if I'm doing this right. I mean, I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it really kind of depends. And I think it depends on the task group too. Like here, we're going to be checking in with each other periodically, but we're content focused. I mean, the action phase is 40 minutes of conversation about an action phase, right? So it is very content focused, whereas like the warm up maybe of this group is more process focused. So I think, like I said, depending on what group you're in, it might vary a lot. Does anybody have anything else on that to kind of touch on, or no? Okay. So some things that I thought was really important was recognizing conflict and expressing feedback to various group members. And so that's on page 73 through 77. And so what are your, Cindy, do you want to go first? And what might conflict look like in the action phase?
Yeah, when I was reading through this and they were talking about, I know they'd given some examples in there too, or some scenarios. And where I thought just in general kind of conflict might happen during that state, during action, would probably be if there's already differences in people's values, you know, or what people are seeing, or their morals, maybe to what their expectations are, or what their priorities are for the group. You know, like I said, people might come in with their own ideas and still have difficulty kind of up to others and hearing other people's opinions. But I also think too, one thing I saw in there particularly was the example with Brenda in it. I forget which one that was, but like what people's definitions are. And I know we've had that happen in our cohort before too, where like we get hung up on a definition and it creates a lot of like discussion. I don't know if it's full on conflict, but you know, it creates a lot of that discussion because people do come at it from different angles. So I think those are probably where I see that conflict can happen during action, because you're actually now starting to get into the actual, you know, solving the issue or working on the problem that the group is supposed to be working on. So that's kind of what I see so far, is those kinds of things with like values, your morals, how you define things, what perspective you take looking at things. I could see could lead to conflict.
Definitely. Katie, what are your thoughts on it?
I think primarily, you know, I totally agree with everything that Cindy had said. I think it does have to do with I think it has to do with clash of personalities, values and morals, just kind of reiterating what Cindy had said. And I think another thing that could cause conflict, and I know I've seen this before, is communication. So not really communicating your needs. And that's something that I'm continuing to work on in my internship, really, is communicating my needs and just making sure it's clear and direct communication that you need to express within your task group, because if you don't all know exactly what the task is, or you need to have different definitions of your task, it can get out of hand. You know, the task group could go in many different ways. So having clear communication with your task group members, explaining if things are bothering you within, just being honest and clear, and there's a nice way to say everything. So communication doesn't have to be harsh, directed communication. It can be kind. It's kind of like the process too. Like that's another way to learn how to work with your task group members and process things with them. Is having that direct communication to avoid some of that conflict.
Definitely. I think exactly what you're saying. Communication is key in like everything. People do things very differently, no matter like this conversation even. Like you could be perceiving something differently than how I'm perceiving it, vice versa, whatever. So definitely having that clear-cut communication. And I think Minnesotans are notorious for that passive-aggressive little thing that we have. So I think that could definitely be problematic in our state, or with people that we encounter in our state, and elsewhere too, of course. But I like what you're saying exactly. Just be like very clear, very direct, and there's a way to do it. Like how we talked about in class that one day. Like there's a way to communicate directiveness or to challenge somebody, but to do it in like a not like aggressive way. You know, I think it's definitely important. Do you guys have some examples? I know, Katie, you kind of touched on your internship, but like any specific examples or things that come up that when you've experienced conflict in a group setting, and just if you want to example that experience a little bit for us, how it was approached and what was involved and what you were on it?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had some different communication stuff in my internship, but I'm going to kind of go back to, I worked in this agency in kind of near St. Cloud, and I worked there for 2 years, 2.5, and we do a lot of consults and stuff. And I worked in the preschool day treatment, so we would consult a lot, like twice a week, 3 times a week sometimes, about the kids, because they were so high risk and they were so little. So a lot of times there was a little therapist, a practitioner, and a teacher. So we worked beautifully together. But sometimes when we would add like county workers or other people in the consults, we had different definitions of what we wanted to see from the kids, especially when you add people who don't always understand. For example, with these kids, and we've done a lot of research. All three of the lead therapists, the lead teacher, and the lead practitioner, we all did a lot of research on developmental repair. And we felt like we were going to approach this from an attachment-based kind of therapy role in PBT, in preschool day treatment. And how we were running things wasn't exactly what the community was looking for, but so that created kind of a little bit of conflict when we were looking at our action part of our job with this. So that was just something that we kind of needed to communicate on a little bit better. And to communicate better, the county worker ended up coming to more consults about this child in particular. And that kind of resolved some of the conflict we were having. And he was able to learn a little bit more about what we were doing, and we were able to learn a little bit more about what she wanted to see. So that's an example that I have.
Good. I think that's really, really helpful. I'm having a little bit hard time hearing you sometimes. You're kind of cutting in and out. I don't know why, but I don't know. But okay, Cindy, do you have something that you want to share about conflict?
Sure. I'm actually having this right now in my job too. So about 9 months ago, maybe close to a year, our lead psychologist took a promotion. And so we had another psychologist come in to take her position. And prior to that psychologist coming in, our team together was working really well because our philosophy was all the same and our direction was all the same. And we had worked together for quite a few years. But I've noticed now that when this new person has come in, when I talked about like definitions and expectations and all that, hers are very different than everybody else's, from the majority of the rest of the team. And we've had quite a few conflicts with treatment approaches and recommendations for our patients because of that, because the focus, for us, our number one thing is public safety. We have to be that with working with the mentally ill and dangerous. Is like our number one is public safety, and then it goes to the client, the patient, actually. And she kind of flips it a little bit, where it should be more about the patient first. So she's a little bit more agreeable to having people go in the community that are possibly having a little more psychotic symptoms at times, that kind of thing, because she's very person-centered, but she's got to understand we have a little different population than regular, inpatient or outpatient mental health, and so we've gotten into quite a few conflicts, and very difficult with that, and we've tried to resolve it, and our leaders have tried to. We've had other meetings and tried to come to a focus, kind of having some direction laid out, but that's never has really come, been able to work itself out, because we still experience these conflicts based upon, our expectations, our directions, our philosophies towards treating our just recently, this kind of where it gets into is this individual recommended a certain culturally based CD treatment for somebody, but technically I'm the one that can do that because we all have our specialties, and mental health. I don't step with mental health. I get my little niche of CD, and this recommendation was done and already executed on, they were this person. I'm like, I gotta hear that, because when we gotta go in front of a court, I have to, I'm the one that has to testify on it, and if I'm not a part of that decision making, what happens? So I dealt with it. I went to my clinical supervisor first because I felt I kind of needed an impartial view, because I just didn't want to get I'm being too sensitive or something. But I was able to talk with our unit director about it, and we've kind of come to some conclusions about what to do, but it is still something, like I say, we're still dealing with that kind of conflict. And I don't know exactly what it'll take to kind of make it work right, you know. Like I said, we do great meetings with our clients and making sure everybody's involved and coming to a decision when our clients are directly there. But when it's us as a team, it's not so much like that. So it's an ongoing issue. And I can see learning about this right now with doing this class and these work groups, I can really say, I'm like, okay, this is kind of where we're you know, lacking. And so I definitely think it's something as a treatment unit we have to work on too. So that's kind of the most current, I mean, that's one I'm going through right now too. It's been working with a group that's been having a lot of conflict. So
you guys don't really have, it hasn't really been resolved yet, right? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Not so much, you know, it's you know, I think it's involving the patient. It's probably to the point it's supposed to be, you know, because he's been referred to this, but in terms of how we go about that process of referring and stuff, that still hasn't really been resolved, but we're kind of in I don't know what we're going to do really with that now. So
that sounds really frustrating. Can you guys see me? Sorry.
No.
Yeah, I'm frozen. I don't know what's going on, but you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, well, I'll just keep talking and hopefully my thing will show up again. But I think that's really important because, like you said, at least the patient isn't being affected direct. Like, I mean, they're being affected, but it's when the patient is involved, at least, not becoming an issue. And I think that is oftentimes an occurrence when staff has their own like issues. Do you find that it's like a level thing? Like the psychologist feels like I have the degree to like know the best and things like that, or is it more of like she or he is new, and they're still kind of learning the ropes? Or what's your perspective on that? I'm really interested in this. So.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit of both. I think because I don't have the PhD or the PsyD or whatever, I think that plays a little part into it. And just kind of knowing that there's a process, you have to go through certain channels. You know, I have to get, when we do something like that, I have to bring in my supervisor, my department. We have to make these decisions as a department too. So they're not aware too of the procedures we have to go through, you know. And so if they had included me in that decision, I would be like, well, this is what I have to do. I have to go speak with these people and we have to discuss it and have a team meeting about it as a department. So I think it's kind of a little combination of both those things, Lindsay, about, you know, just kind of like, yeah, I think the intent, I don't think the intentions were ever meant to like hurt or, you know, like, you know, step on toes or intentional, but it's just kind of like, you have to be a little more mindful.
Definitely. Well, I think, I mean, like you're saying, that's like kind of perfect and pertaining to what we're talking about, is that this class is kind of helping, I don't know, maybe in the situation a little bit. Mm-hmm. Kind of going off of what you're saying, I think that a lot of times, well, two things. First, my internship right now, I think handles conflict fairly well. I think like the care conferences, again, that we talked about in the warm-up phase come to mind, and how they're really set up well. But it's very important to see that, so we have 5 different units, 5 different TCUs, and each has their own treatment team, basically. So they each have like the therapists are assigned to a unit, social workers assigned to a unit, things like that. And I've been involved in several care conferences kind of across the board, just to observe different styles and different things like that. And one of the units is very like more laid back. Their communication is very like, it's direct, but I think they all get along so well and kind of have worked together for so long and know what each other is saying and what they're not saying. It's really good about clarification. So going back to that important communication that Katie was talking about, they're amazing at being like, okay, so we've established that X, Y, and Z needs to be done, but who's going to take the initiation on that? And then like my social worker that I follow primarily, she's still like a lot of times she's like, okay, wait, so are you taking it or am I taking it or who's taking the like steps to do? And she's really good about making sure that like we know where the starting point is and like what's going to be the follow through after that and who's going to be doing what. So I think like that's amazing. One of the other social workers, a different unit, her therapy is done much more meticulous and much more like, well, the patient has reached their goals. We need to have them discharged. We can only work with them for 2 more days. We don't have any flexibility, and that's going to be how it is. And then they leave it up to the social worker to kind of get that discharge planning going, which is fine. But sometimes the patient feels like they need a little extra time, especially if they're not discharging back home to the community. They're going to a long-term care facility or assisted living or something like that. Makes the discharge planning a little bit more complicated. And there's one woman in particular I'm thinking of that has quite a passive aggressive tone with things, but kind of has like the look. So I think that's definitely problematic. A lot of times the social worker that works on that unit will come back to the office like very upset or very frustrated. And there's an age difference, and I think that can provide a little bit of an issue too, because the social worker is very young, and the therapist is, I don't know, probably in her like 40s or 50s, so it's experience. She's been in the field a very long time, so she kind of knows what she's doing and kind of has her mind made up, but I think there's a little bit of a lack of respect for the newer social worker, just because, I mean, she's young, and so I think that kind of plays a role in it too. But again, I think in that situation, the patient is affected, but it's handled in a way where like it's kind of behind the scenes. It's not in front of the patient or a patient's family or things like that. But I think that is just as problematic when there's conflict within like the actual group of employees, and even if the patient isn't around to see that conflict necessarily. And I think it directly or it indirectly affects the patient regardless in some circumstances. So,
well, I was too, if they can pick up on your vibes and all that stuff too, and if they know that the team of the employees together are having difficulties and all that stuff, it's going to carry over too into how you interact too with your clients, even if you're trying not to bring that forward. You can just kind of maybe see the frustration.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that's something I have to keep in check with all this going on.
Definitely. The other example I was going to bring up is at the hospital that I worked at, we had 2 nursing supervisors, and technically I was nursing staff because I was on the floor. And I was assigned to one supervisor. And she hired me, and then she actually went on maternity leave and then needed an extension because her baby was sick. So she wasn't really around for like the first 6 months of my employment there, which was a pretty vital 6 months. We were transitioning and opening a new hospital. And I was working like a lot more hours and picking up shifts because we were short staffed. And so I needed a supervisor at that time. So I actually kind of latched on to the other supervisor. And then when that initial supervisor came back and wanted to supervise me, it was a really hard transition for me. And I ended up just having the conversation with her that it's nothing like personal, but Susie and I had like established a really good connection and conversation and kind of a way of going about things where she would let me do my thing until she had a trust built in me that I could, do something, and she would trust that if something on the unit was going awry or that I didn't know how to handle a situation, or if I had a tough time, that I would come to her and we would have a very open discussion about what that would look like and what I would need from her, or if I just needed time to vent or something like that. And the supervisor was really receptive to that when I told her, and we ended up kind of switching me over into Susie's area. So that was really helpful. It wasn't really anything against the first supervisor. I didn't want her to feel as though like it was her fault. It was just like that first 6 months was so vital, and so like we built a really strong rapport with each other, and so that was kind of nice, and it was a good resolution, and I was really lucky that that one was kind of on the more minor side of things, because I know conflict can be not so minor. Does anybody else have anything else they want to kind of talk about with conflict, or do you guys want to move on to the giving and receiving feedback?
I don't really have anything else to add with conflict.
Perfect. So later on in the chapter, they kind of start talking about helping members learn to give and receive feedback. And so this might be kind of an obvious question, but I think nonetheless it's important to talk about. Why do you think that giving feedback is so beneficial for group progress? Katie, do you want to kind of start on that one?
So receiving feedback, you're saying, or giving feedback?
Why
or just in general?
Well, I mean, I suppose either giving and receiving is. Why do you think they're both helpful?
Yeah, for me, feedback in general, whether I'm giving or receiving it, helps my growth by kind of going back to that communication piece for me. It just helps me go in a direction that I know that I'm supposed to be going, and it helps me help them find the way that I'm supposed to be going. So like, if I'm thinking one thing about a client and how to treat a client, and my supervisor's thinking another, or if I'm handling a situation in a way that my supervisor doesn't think so, it's nice for me to be able to be like, oh, here are my thoughts about this, and here are your thoughts. How can we compromise? What could I do differently? What could you have done differently? How can we best serve the client? Because in my experience of work, when we're giving and receiving feedback, both my supervisors are doing we're really trying to focus on what's best for the client. Not necessarily whose way is best, but how can we do our best for them. And it's just really beneficial to kind of clear the air and just have that clear communication, which is kind of what I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think whether it's giving or receiving is both super helpful. Cindy, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and in addition to just going off of what Katie was talking about, I think too, especially in the group process or when you're working with the team, is feedback early on, and not it's a month later, or it's your review time for the year or whatever. I think that feedback is important to be early on, so you don't have that conflict maybe happen later on. So I think, like what Katie's talking about with communication, I think that's a part of it too. Was when those things are going on, maybe we should be talking about them, earlier on, instead of maybe waiting for some set time to talk about it. That it's really important to keep that feedback open throughout the time. So I know in CD treatment, we give our clients their feedback every week. We have to give them a progress update every week. So instead of waiting 30 days, when they're supposed to be almost leaving, and I think too, as working as a team or a task group, that it's important to have that feedback happen early too, like throughout the whole time, and not just at certain review periods or near the end too.
I think, yeah, exactly what I think. Like, I'm a huge advocate for prevention, and I think what you're saying, giving that feedback early, is definitely to prevent that. So that's a really good point you make. Yeah, I think both of you make really good points on the importance of that. I think a lot of times positive feedback is really forgotten about, and I think sometimes feedback is always and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like maybe in this profession particularly, I know at the hospital, like, we're so focused on giving positive feedback to the patients, like you kind of were saying too, Cindy. But it was like very forgotten to give feedback to your peers. So we started this program, it's called Big Shout Outs. So, I mean, we didn't like start that, but And so what it was there was just like a huge stack of like sheet of paper on each unit, and then there's 2 carbon copies, and you would write the person's name of who you were giving a big shout out to, kind of a brief description of why they deserve this big shout out, and then what core principles were covered. So you could like circle if they were all listed, and you could circle which ones were kind of being touched on. And then one of the copies was given to a supervisor and it went in the employee file. Another was given to the actual employee, and the copy was made and it was posted on our big shout out board, and it was updated every so often. I'm not sure who did the updating. But even that, like to go to work and open your locker and to find that you had received a big shout out was like really, it was kind of cool. And like some of us were like silly and would like give it to our friends or whatever and things like that too. But like there was like a lot of genuineness, is a word, behind the program. And I think back to that all the time because I'm finding in this internship, people don't really receive positive feedback ever. We verbalize that to each other periodically, but it's not really done in like a formal way. And I think that's a really important thing to like motivate people and to avoid burnout and just to kind of like check in and like, even if you don't feel like you need a pat on the back, it still feels good to have a pat on the back. And so I think those were like a really good way to recognize like, hey, you did this really awesome thing. You went above and beyond. Or even if it was small and insignificant, people like noticing that. I think it was really nice. I really liked that. And so I think that was like a huge, I don't know, I liked it. I suggested to my supervisor at internship that we do something like that. And I don't think she really cared, but I'm going to still push it because I think it's important. So, yeah. Okay, but I'm really interested in getting to, or sorry, does anybody have, or Katie, did you tell me an example of, you briefly touched on it, but do you have anything more? Sorry.
Yeah, I actually have some from this week.
Oh, great.
I have one for my work and one for my internship, and they were like completely opposite. My internship one gave me some feedback earlier this week, and I think that's why I'm most focused on communication during this conversation, because that's something that I've really been processing through this week. At my internship feedback, we have these monthly meetings that we're discussing and it kind of turned into evaluation for me. And some of the stuff that we touched on, I was completely blindsided by. I had really no idea that this was going on for them. They were seeing, like, this is their kind of experience, and my experience is different. So I was a little blindsided, and it was, it was hard. It's hard, especially like kind of what you said in this profession. I feel like we don't get that positive feedback, and if we do, we kind of cover it with some of that negative feedback on top. Like, here's what you can do better, but here's what you need. It's not really a sandwich. Like, it should be, for me, something I like to have is positive, something to work on, and then finish with another positive, like sandwich it in between. Just to kind of lift some spirits. So I've really done some different things to kind of work on some things at my internship and directly communicate to them, hey, if something's going on, initially I want that feedback right away. So those are things that I'm changing in my internship to kind of work on that communication piece. Plus I have 3 supervisors, and I think when 3 supervisors get together, they kind of get stuck in that group think, and they may focus on some negatives more. So the first feedback experience wasn't very positive for me. It was kind of disappointing. And then I had one later on during the week at my counseling services position, and I was represented by HR with me, and then my supervisor and I were kind of having a dialogue, and it went phenomenal. Like, it was, I've been there for 3 months. It was my 3 months eval, and I wasn't blindsided. I've gotten initial feedback from my supervisor, and we had a really good dialogue going on. And it was just a really refreshing experience. And what I talked to them about is kind of my previous evaluation for my internship, and I was like, this kind of happened to me early on in this week. So really, they were kind of saying, us as a company, we really, when we have these annuals or 3 months evaluations, it's not like boring. You should have constant communication going all the time. So they apologized for my experience and at the other internship, and then they were really receptive to hear more about them and how it was going. So I really had 2 different feedback experiences this week. So this is really relevant to kind of what I'm going through this topic. So I'm glad to share it with you.
Well, I'm happy that you are sharing it with us, so thank you. That's like so hard. I hate like that feeling of being blindsided and not knowing that that's like how things are being interpreted on their end, and having that conversation. And like you said, like it is that there's like very rarely that someone's like, hey, come to my office, I just need to tell you how good you're doing. Like people don't have time for that. And it's so sad because you're right. Like you're doing really well, like right here, but you really need to work on, and it's like that is like it's I don't know. I think that's really frustrating. That's hard. That's why we have that experience. I'm happy that those have gone a little bit better. Yeah, I don't know. That's frustrating. Feedback is hard, but I think we should do that as a cohort. We need to start giving each other like positive feedback too.
Great. That's such a good
idea. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to review. I think we're at like, I don't know, between 5 and 10 minutes still, so we're doing good on time. But just review the Parker survey, this one, and kind of touch on. I know we touched on it a little bit last time, but I think we focused more on our strengths as opposed to what we contribute to this. And so I'll start. I'm the challenger, which we kind of covered in class, and everyone kind of expected of me. So, but I think kind of like we talked about, there's a time and a place to challenge people, and I think there's a certain way of approaching that and approaching that delicately, and also like knowing your audience. Like if I know what you guys are already just from that conversation in class, but if I knew that like you were also a challenger, I might feel like a little bit more assertive or more something, you know what I mean? Rather than like, okay, you don't take feedback as similar if I need to like, I don't know, just like approach it a little bit delicately, which I know some people disagree with me on, but that's how I feel. I know we're the 4, but I forget what each of you guys are. Katie, you're which ones are you?
I'm collaborator and communicator. So what it says here, which I think is really relevant to the action phrase, it says, at times you may not give sufficient attention to the immediate task or short-term objectives in particular. So my understanding of these 2 kind of working together is I really do like the process part of a task group. I like to get to know people. And this kind of goes along with some of my strengths from the Strength Finders too. I like to build relationships. I like to get to know who I'm working with and how they work. And sometimes that takes longer to do. So then that makes the task go longer. And that's not necessarily helpful. I mean, it can be helpful in sometimes the process as long as I do it in a timely manner. So that's kind of how I do it in the action phase. Like, when I've been part of teachers, I'm good at figuring where people fit best because I've gotten to know people. So that's kind of how my leadership styles and my team player survey, that's my interpretation of it.
No, and that totally, I kind of just giggled to myself a little bit at first because you keep touching on communication through this, which I think is fantastic. And it's funny that your Parker results is partially communicator because that totally, like everything just like clicks. Like right there, it's like communication needs to be clear. Why? Because I'm a communicator and that's what I do. Like it's fantastic. So that's perfect. So then Cindy, you are what, a contributor, right?
Contributor, yes. I was just reading through where it says the interpreting your results for contributor, and the last line there says the contributor often does not see the big picture or the need for a positive team climate. So I might be contributing to the problem now that I think. Well, obviously with action phase, my kind of personality loves this because it's the doing and it's the getting the tasks done and the action side of it because you know what does it tell me? I'm the whole I get all my homework done and I set these high standards and all that. But so I think that's the positives that I bring to it. My type of personality would bring to it, but on the flip side too, you sometimes get too tunnel vision and too just focused on one thing I see this in myself too, that I might not see the big picture because I have to be so focused on the one to get done or whatever my responsibility is. So I might not be the best communicator. So Katie and I would probably like, like have a lot of conflict. But that could be where I would struggle, but also with the wanting to get tasks done, wanting to actually work on something and not get too caught up in some of the, you know, just kind of you know, what is it? I don't want to say less valuable, the kind of things that aren't a priority at the moment for the group. So I definitely see my contributor side as being the one that really would you know, work well during the action phase. So
yeah, and to kind of practice some of that positive feedback, Cindy, I know that you were the first one to kind of present and kind of run this task group during the phase, and I think that really fits that contributor because you were ready to go, you wanted to get it done, and you did such a great job that first time. So I don't think you can diminish your contributing style because it really is important. So you're kind of like a leader for me and Lindsay now, and you've really set the bar high. And so I just want to put for that.
I more do that for my own nervousness.
Yeah, I know. Totally.
So I trying to preserve my own mental health too. So my, you know, self-serving.
Yeah.
Appreciate if others get benefits from it. Thank you.
No, you can't put yourself down. Katie.
Thank you.
Compliment. No, I think that like what Katie was saying, that's exactly right. Like that is like it's so funny that you were initiating everything on that. And like Katie is a total communicator. Like it's just so obvious. Like, I'm like very obvious to the calendar. Like that's who I am. I don't know. I see it. I'm gonna pretend to see it in like a positive light. But I think like kind of what you said, there are pros and cons to each, and people are gonna match differently. I think the way I interpret challenger is along with how Katie was saying with her strengths too. Like one of my strengths is being a maximizer. So I like to take whatever I'm going into and make it better. And I think that's kind of why I play the challenger role is I want to make sure that we're doing the absolute best that we can be doing. And I have high expectations usually for myself, and I want to make sure that those expectations are being met for myself and for the people that I'm serving. So I think that's why I probably challenge as much as I do. But sometimes I don't know how to back off, so I could maybe cause a little conflict with that. But Katie, our communicator, can just tell me, hey, stop what you're doing.
I appreciate people who, because it says here you're assertive, and I really appreciate that because you're not afraid to be like, hey, you're not afraid to communicate. And I'm like, hey, let's communicate together. I don't feel like you're being too aggressive. I feel like, hey, let's say this differently. I'll work with you and we'll do it together. You know? Exactly. I love that. We work well together.
We do. We're a very good team. I'll tell Cindy, hey, your tunnel vision is getting too much, and we'll be great. So, cool. Okay. Well, I'm really glad. I think that like this stuff and the strength stuff is really important because I think, again, like that positive feedback, and I think people really thrive when they can talk about their strengths and what they bring to the team, and when they are really kind of they know what they are and they're okay with it and it's good. And I like touching on that. So thank you for talking about that. So we'll kind of roll into the closure. whatever section here. And I just want to hear what everyone's biggest takeaway from today's task group was. Do you want to go first on that?
I think what I'm learning more too with my contributor is just kind of seeing what I can do to improve myself as a team member. Because I know in our readings and stuff, we'll talk about how you can tend to blame. I think that was in one of the articles we've read too. And I'm like, at first I didn't believe that. And then I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, shoot. And so it's made me be a little bit more aware of my own things that I can work on. And also too, just kind of what I do bring with being a contributor, and that I am very task oriented and the getter done person, you know? So it's been doing this stuff has always been so interesting to see just kind of how it is broken down, because I've worked in, mental health CD for almost 19 years now too. And I've never had this kind of stuff ever in all these years and trainings and all that. Never had to really break this stuff down, which you think we would have 20 years ago have had to learn this. But we never did for some reason. So I just think it's really good to see just kind of what that action phase does, and just how all of us being different though with our styles and all that, we can still come together. And we really do, I think, work well together with that. So I'm just learning so much more. I think that's kind of the biggest thing I've taken away from this. So
good. Makes me really happy. I think like what you're saying, there's just so much mindfulness that goes into like school that I don't think people have, but really even like see. And it's really important to know yourself, both the positive and the weaknesses. And I think that's awesome that you're learning that and kind of seeing that within yourself and learning how to take that back into your work and into your place of internship and all that. So, Katie, what is your biggest takeaway from today?
Yeah, so kind of going off of what Cindy had said, and I think we all are experiencing this. I feel like I've told this to people before. The MSW program is like going for therapy with a bunch of people, and you're like learning. I've never learned so much about myself at all. And sometimes I'm like, whoa, but when it comes to a task group, I like learning how I am in a task group, because I personally love working. I love work ethic. I think I have a strong work ethic, and anything I can do to become better in my job and a better social worker is really great. And that starts with learning about yourself and learning that I'm a communicator and a collaborator. And these are the things I bring to the table. These are the things I need from other people. And that's something that I've really, especially in the action phase, I can get kind of caught up on like learning about people and trying to communicate effectively. So as long as I'm surrounded by challengers and contributors, I think that makes for a really excellent task group, and I'm excited to find those people in my career from now on. So that's kind of just learning about myself and learning how I am, especially related to task group.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I think, the biggest takeaway is I definitely agree. I think just kind of learning about ourselves and how we are like going back to those original questions with the content and processing. But with those processing questions, who am I with you? And like that kind of thing, I think is really important in bringing that into the action phase or bringing that into whatever phase of a task group that you're in. I also just want to say I really appreciate you guys sharing your experiences with both conflict and feedback. I know some of that can be kind of difficult, and I know it sounds like some of you with the conflict that you're experiencing at work right now is really tough, and some of the feedback wasn't exactly communicated the way it's supposed to be. So thank you for kind of talking about that. What understanding have you gained from giving and receiving feedback? Is there anything more that you really want to touch on with that kind of stuff? Or do you guys feel like we've kind of covered the feedback? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think we've covered it pretty well. It is an important part of our work, and it will continue to be prevalent throughout our careers. So my understanding is it's a positive thing, even though sometimes not done correctly, it's not. And that's just something that our profession needs to work on. Not just ourselves, but everyone needs to work on still.
I like two in there, and I forget which page it's on with that conflict was really the questions to ask yourself. I forget, it gave like 4 questions, like what are my fears with talking to this person or something. I really like that because I'm like, gosh, I think that can help me more.
Yeah.
I keep it in mind. I forget which page it's on, but I had questions if you're giving feedback or if you're having to receive feedback. Those questions, I thought that was really good too. So I'm gonna keep those in mind too here as I deal with this stuff at work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find so those are really
85.
so good. 85, you said? Okay. Oh, yep, there.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, I think those are definitely really prevalent. Yeah, I think just kind of one last thing with that. I really want to stay focused on giving positive feedback. So I'm gonna like after this, I'm gonna make a goal for myself of how I can like giving positive feedback more about the prevalence in my life, whether it's like a board or a leadership or something. But I think it's just it's a really positive way to keep people motivated and keep people going. So okay, and then there's 2 last things. We can kind of discuss how this has prepared us for what the closure phase is going to look like. And Katie, do you want to touch on that maybe just because you're going to be the one doing the closure phase or facilitating that?
Yeah. I think since we're all kind of thinking that today it's more about ourselves and how we are in the action phase, to kind of prep us for the closure phase, I mean, we'll all have closure phases in whether it be in a task group or in a job and things like that. And we all know that we really well round each other. So finishing out, I think, will be a really positive experience, I'm hoping, during the closure phase. And I think it'll just help us resolve. You know, we're thinking about how we are, we're reflecting on how we are as people and how we are working together. And I think at the end, it'll really all come together as a positive experience. Like we did this together. We know about each other now, and we know how we work together. And going forward in our master program, we know that this is a group that could work together again. And we know if we work with other people, these are the kind of things that we're looking for in the group. So our closure will be a good time to finish our reflection. Just get ready for the next task group we're a part of.
Awesome. Perfect. Cindy, do you have anything that you want to say with that or?
Yeah, just when prepping for that closure phase, as Katie was talking, I was thinking our strengths that we came up with for our practicum class, our 5, my number 1 was context. So I love like looking at the past.
Yeah.
Closure is probably going to be my wheelhouse, or be one I'm very interested in because I like doing that, looking at how things from that past have contributed to where we are now. And so I think that kind of goes well with closure phase. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Good. Awesome. Okay. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the closure phase myself. I'm excited for Katie to be the facilitator since she has such awesome communication skills. It's going to go very well. I just have one kind of brief mindfulness activity that we'll kind of close with. Does anybody have any last things before we go into the mindfulness activity? Or are you feeling comfortable about today?
I'm good.
We're good, yeah.
Okay. So I'll kind of like talk to each of you separately on it, but it's just a really quick grounding activity. And so I'm going to ask each of you 5 things you see, 4 things you feel that you can like, touch just sitting in your seat, 3 things that you hear, 2 things that you smell, and 1 thing that you taste. And that's just a way to kind of remain present and focused on what we're doing right now. So Katie, I'll start with you. What are 5 things that you are visually seeing right now?
Yeah, so I'm seeing the computer, have a box, burrito next to me, ceiling fan, orange juice, and some of my textbooks in front of me.
Perfect. What are 4 things that you can touch? It doesn't necessarily need to be with your hands. You can talk about your feet or whatever.
So, my parents are moving, and I'm in this weird bedroom that has a bed frame with no, like I brought a chair in me, so I'm kind of feeling the chair on me, and I'm leaning against the bed frame. And so my knees are touching the bed frame. My bottom is touching the bottom of my chair. My feet are kind of my hands, I mean, throughout this, I mean, they're not really touching anything right now, but I can say that they're touching the person's hair. And one more. Oh, my back is touching the cushion.
Perfect. What are 3 things that you can hear?
I can hear my brother upstairs. I can hear you guys. And I can also hear there's a fan going in the other room. I can hear that too.
Perfect. 2 things that you're smelling.
I can smell the breakfast burrito, and I smell this candle that it's coming from the bathroom. It's like this lavender scent. It's really delicious.
Nice. And what is one thing?
Throughout this, I've been drinking some OJ, some orange juice, so I can taste that on my tongue.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. Cindy, same 5 questions for you. What are 5 things that you're seeing?
Okay. Well, I can see outside my living room window and I see trees and the street. I can see my sofa and recliner. I can see my laptop. I can see my television, and I can see into my kitchen. So I see my kitchen table.
Perfect. What are 4 things that you are touching right now?
Okay, my feet are touching my floor. It's a hardwood floor in my living room. I'm sitting on my couch, one of my couches. I'm touching my laptop screen and also the couch pillows.
Perfect. What are 3 things you're hearing?
I can hear cars on the street. I'm hearing some birds out in the trees in the front yard. And I'm also hearing rustling in my back bedroom, so that's making me wonder what the heck my cat's doing.
What are 2 things that you smell right now?
I am smelling the toast I was eating earlier, and I'm also smelling the snow melting from outside. You know how you can get that kind of the wet grass smell?
Wonderful smell. And one thing that you taste.
I've been drinking out my Diet Coke during this, so.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to go on the closure phase with Katie, and otherwise, I'll see you later.
Yeah. Okay.
Doodles.